Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. On this session on Perspective Nation, we shall be discussing a book. And our guests on the main panel, we have just one guest and one person on the panel today is Denise Grant. She is the author of the book. We are going to allow her to talk about the book. But before we get in there, I want to thank everybody who shared on their WhatsApp platform or any social media platform. We really do appreciate when you join us and you share these links so that others can join and share with us as well. I want to thank Valerie Saningong. He's the person who has been donating this WhatsApp platform. I also want to thank especially those who are joining us for the first time. I understand there were a lot of people will be joining us for the first time. We do appreciate that. I will be putting a link on our chat forum. So if you want to join, we have like a notification board. It's a WhatsApp group where we send out notification messages for different topics that we discuss. If you want to join, please feel free to click on the link and do that. I will also put links on where you can purchase the book as we go ahead, and I'll be referring people to the book. Now, there are two ways of asking questions or making comments. One way is to raise your hand, and I'm definitely going to call you in. Well, there are three actually. The most common way is you raise your hand, and then I'm going to bring you up on the screen and you can ask your question. The second method is to send us a text through our chat forum, and it's going to be read. You can ask a question, make a comment, improve on the conversation, whatever you feel to do, please do it. Just make sure you are polite, and we don't expect our guest and the panel tonight to answer questions that she is not comfortable with. That said, I will plead with everybody who is joining to turn off their cameras. The reason we are doing that is we just want to focus on what we are discussing, and turn off your microphones as well. So put everything on mute so we don't get distractions once we start the conversation. And if you feel like, you can definitely turn on your camera if you want to ask a question, and turn on your microphone. Our guest today is Denise Grant. So let's start with you. Who is Denise Grant before the author, before we come to the book?
Before the book?
Before the book. Go ahead.
I have been in the legal profession pretty much my whole career. I've worked in private practice and law firms for over 25 years as a law clerk. And then in the past about 6-7 years, I switched over to becoming a legal assistant because I really wanted to get out of private practice. I wasn't happy. I felt like I hit a glass ceiling there. So I tried a new venture. And so that's where I've been as a legal assistant for the past few years. And then about 2016 was when I really started to experience racism in a way that I did not experience it in the past. And I guess it's because maybe the organization I was with, it had the environment where we were supposed to be inclusive. We talked about it. They had policies and all these great things in place to make me feel I was pretty much somewhat protected. And so with that expectation that I had, then I realized that the opportunities that I wanted, they weren't coming. So, with the frustration, applying for a position, being turned down, 4, 5, 6 times, after a while, you begin to feel the effects of that. And then actually the first time I got turned down, I actually decided to apply to law school because that had been a life mission of mine. And so I applied for law school, I got in, and from 2016, I was studying my law degree. And so I'm one exam away from completing that right now. And so here I am. That's sort of like the general journey of how I came up to the book.
Wow. You have a very interesting life there. You got frustrated where you were working as a law clerk and then decided to go one step higher.
Actually, a law clerk is one step backwards. I went backwards.
Oh, really? Okay, I don't know. I was thinking it's the other way around. So how is law school going? What are the challenges you have?
Sorry?
What are the challenges you are facing going back to law school?
Well, trying to manage, I had a 4-hour commute. I have a family, a very demanding job. as well as just life in general, between kids' activities, keeping the home, trying to get back and forth 4 hours every day, 2 hours each way. And of course, getting my work done and then fitting and studying in between that. So very challenging, no doubt. But at the same time, a lot of people ask me, how do you do it? And as I thought about how do I do it, and the simple answer was, you got to want it bad enough. And I did, because this has always been my passion from I was growing up, and I didn't have the opportunity in the earlier days. So it was like now or never.
So when you finish law school, what sort of law are you going to be practicing?
Well, studying law, I knew the challenge with studying law, and that is, it's a long process. It requires a lot of requirements that you need to pass, right? You have to do your degree, go to the bar, do your articling. So it's not just something you just come out of law school and you start to work as a lawyer. And knowing that I had a number of other hurdles to go through, I kind of thought, what, even if I don't practice law, do I still want this? And my answer was yes. So I kept my option open in terms of what would I do at the end of having achieved this law degree. And so after I finished my next exam, I still would have more studying to do if I wanted to practice law. But then in the midst of doing that, I started to do speaking at Women's Conference in 2017. And then I discovered I had a greater passion than law. I thought, how could I have a greater passion than law after I've been working so hard for this one? And that passion was speaking to other people to encourage them to pursue their dream. And that really has been my greater joy than studying law.
Well, let's talk about your speaking ability. You just came back from a TEDx event. Let's share that experience. How was it like?
It was really an awesome experience. Just, to prepare to get there, doing all the plans in the middle of the whole pandemic, situation as well. So there's hurdles that you sort of have to factor in. And then just being there, believing in myself that I could do it. I think that was probably one of the hardest part of the whole process. But nevertheless, I decided, what, come what may, I'm going to show up. So having stood there, just showed up and put in one foot in front of the other, and I did it. So it's been a great experience.
So there might be some people listening to you, and even though they came here for racism, they might want to get some inspiration from you to one day also be somebody, a speaker on TED Talk or another platform. How do you go about it? How do you start calling the people at TED Talk and say, I want to talk to them? How does it work?
Well, it's about your message. Someone actually approached me and offered me the opportunity. So knowing that the individual knew I had the book coming, they knew the message that I had behind the book. And so they thought that, it would be a good fit. The theme for the talk was beyond statistics. So it was about having a creative idea, creative perspective that you felt the world could benefit from. And so with that theme, my subject matter just happened to play into that theme.
Okay. So let's talk about the book now. This book has been making a lot of noise around the web, all over the place, and people cannot lay their hands on it. How did you come about with this topic? Racism, rising above the discomfort of difficult conversation. What is the motivation behind these words? Because any person of color or any African descendant, or even like anybody reading the topic would definitely be interested in knowing what is in there. So why did you choose that topic? How did you come about it?
Well, it was George Floyd incident that really started me on this path, because after the incident, I was really torn. I didn't know what could I do to add to this situation to improve it. So in that whole emotional, with all the protesting, I wanted to be out there on the streets too, but I chose not to go out down the streets. So I really want to find another way of contributing to it. And so as I began to think about my own experiences, then I realized that, you know what, this is not so easy for me to even think about or talk about. And I had a colleague, an Asian colleague, came up to me and said, Denise, tell me something. We experience racism as well, but Black people take it to another level. What's the difference? Can you help me to understand? So while I appreciated her question because I saw she genuinely wanted to know, within me, I felt a range of emotions, that one of which was frustration. The second was, what am I going to say? You know, and in the end, I did my best to educate her as much as I possibly can. But it turns out that I realized my frustration created a barrier for me to really share the message of what I wanted to share. And so this is where the idea of the book came, because I thought, how can I help people to understand what I'm experiencing? I only have to say it once instead of how many times over. Then on the other hand, I realized that there are those on the other side who didn't understand the experience. They thought I was making it up, or I was, just emotional or too sensitive. How do I help them to understand? And so that was the basis in which I wanted to sort of go from there. And in the journey of unpacking my story, that's what helped me to really articulate what I was feeling that I couldn't articulate prior to writing the book. That link that you just had up, that's not the book.
Oh, that's not the book? Okay.
No.
I will get the book. I'm going to make sure I get the book. I'm sorry about that. So I just want to focus on the topic. There are several things that are in the book. But when you look at the topic, like starting with racism, a lot of this is a word that some people don't even like to hear. And above all odds, you decided to put it as the face of your message. How strong an information are you trying to pass out?
Very strong. Because what I discovered in my journey, the book is really about my journey as a victim of systemic racism and the 21 lessons that I learned and applied to transform my own life from being a victim to now a champion for change. Because the emotional journey and the traumas that we have to unpack to get to the other side is real. And if anyone else is like me, I didn't even recognize the trauma that was holding me back at the times when I was experiencing racism. And so my message in the book is to show others like myself, there is hope. There is a way to get from under the oppression, but it requires effort, it requires intention, and it requires strategically going through a process. And that's what I try to convey in my book.
Let's talk about some of your 21 lessons. I think that's the next message on your title. We'll come back and talk about the discomfortableness of the conversation, but just list some of those 21 lessons. Don't go detail into them, just give us like a summary of a few of the lessons. Right.
So a few of them would be, number one, it's important that we acknowledge where we are. If you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're anything like the way I was, just emotionally in a knot, those feelings are real. If you want to cry, it's okay to cry. If you want to shout, it's okay to shout. And but the problem with those feelings is my book focuses on racism in the workplace. And those emotions are not generally in the workplace. So if you get emotional, if you get angry, any of those kind of reactions would give you negative vibes in the office. So how do you deal with that? So that's one aspect. Another aspect is we need to be true to who we are. Now, some of us don't know who we are, and that's difficult when we don't know who we are. So there is a way to also get along that path. We also have fears. At some point, we need to be comfortable with our fears and go into them rather than run away from them, rather than avoiding them. We've got to go towards them. And of course, the difficult conversations. How do we have these difficult conversations? Those two are ones we need to run into rather than away from. Self-care. When we encounter moments of racial discrimination, the anger, the upset, the disappointments, the repeatedly being overlooked, self-care is the way to go. When those incidents happen, it's important that we take time to spend with ourselves, take a bath, take a walk, have a nice meal, do something to pamper yourself, look in the mirror, tell yourself, I love you, because racial discrimination is really rejection, and repeated rejection, it really piles on. So those are just a few.
Okay. Who is your target audience on this book? I don't know if somebody like me purchased the book. Should I share it with my white colleagues? Should I share it with kids? Should I share it with who do you think is should be reading this book?
I think this book should be read by everyone, because I speak to both sides. In the book, I speak to the oppressor as well as the oppressed. And I don't choose sides. There's no blaming, there's no naming, and there's no shaming in the book, because that doesn't solve problems. So what I do is I speak to the oppressor in a very real way, and I speak about what they're responsible for. I also speak to the oppressed and what we are responsible for. And the fact is, to solve this problem, everybody has work to do. There is no pointing fingers. And you can't solve this problem on one side. It requires both sides to participate.
So when you say we, who are you referring to we?
When I say we, I identify with the oppressed because that's been my experience, and that's what I speak to, as well as how I came out of it. I tell my journey of how I went from being oppressed and the steps I took to get above it and over it. So when I say we, I'm just referring to those of us who are oppressed. And when I say those who are the oppressors, that would be on the other side.
Let's talk about some of the discomfortable conversation or difficult conversations. They sound to me like almost the same thing. Some uncomfortable conversations are difficult to have. And you stress both words, the discomfort and the difficult. Let's start with the discomfort. What does the book tell us about discomfort, having discomfortable conversations?
Well, the book talks about discomfort in a sense where when we end up in a situation where there's racial discrimination, and if one side, let's say it's the person who's oppressed, they want to have a conversation with the person who they perceive did something that was offensive, and particularly in the areas of microaggressions. So the interesting thing is that in the book, what I do is I clear up some terminology to get us on the same page about what we're talking about and what racism is, and so that we can all have that understanding. And then on the other hand, I get into the tension that comes out of one side may want to avoid the conversation. One person may want to run into the conversation. And sometimes it's really personality type. And rather than it being a racial issue, it could just be more of a personality situation where we gravitate to how we respond to conflict in different ways. So I really give some strategies and there's some tips of this reality so that we can not necessarily take a person who's avoiding a situation as rejection, but just recognizing that there's other factors that could be happening in a situation that's not racially related. So I try to make that distinction in order to help us get through those conversations. And I've had several difficult conversations with, senior leaders within the organization about the topic. And it even got to a point where I broke into tears in one of them, and all that's in the book as well. And I unpack that to share how I made it through those conversations and tips of how to actually have those conversations effectively.
Yeah, I think share a bit of your experience. I think this is something that a lot of us we go through in our workplace and in some settings, and we don't know how to express ourselves, or we don't know how to go about it. So I would like to hear, or everybody I believe would like to hear some of the information or some of the processes that you went through and you couldn't speak about it.
Right. So one particular conversation I had was where there was a lawyer that I worked with, and I felt that she was condescending to me. And I worked with her for about a year, and I couldn't take it anymore. And one day I emailed my manager and said, I'm not coming in the office, and here's why. And I explained to her the situation with this particular lawyer, and I said, I'm taking a mental health day. And 2 days later, we were in a meeting. 3 managers, 2 were white, 1 was black, and I was the one. And I had all my notes. I had to prove my case, as to why I feel I was being treated unfairly. And it was so uncomfortable because I felt like I'm on trial. Here I am, technically a victim, and I've got to now go defend myself and prove why this person did what they did. But nevertheless, I took my notes, I walked in there, and I told them how I felt. And literally, I have never cried in the office in all the years of my work. And I've seen other people do it. I said, oh, I would never do that. And I cried in this meeting. And I'm not one to cry. I only cry at funerals. And so, but this time, I was okay with it. I let the tears flow. And I think that's important. We got to own where we are. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to get out of it. Don't try to, twist it up. Let it, just leave it. It is what it is. Of course, if it's violence, that needs control. But, I was sad. And so I felt pain. And at the end, I felt heard because I got out what I wanted to say. Nothing really turned from the event, really. But it was more important that I stood up for myself. It's more important that I called it out for what it was. And I left the meeting. I cleaned myself up and left the meeting. And that was pretty much it. I went for a walk and I had coffee with a colleague. And so, but it was worth it. No regrets, because it was part of my journey of taking my power back.
We have a lot of family members and friends. After this, I'll just go to the comments. People, those who are commenting, I'm going to come to you. I just wanted to get this session going. So we have a lot of family members, friends, colleagues who go through the same situation that you just explained, and they're still so scared to speak up. What does the book address this type of situations?
It does. We must speak up. The reason why it was so powerful for me to have that meeting, because I was one of those for years who said nothing. Because I was too afraid to lose my job, because that's a real fear. But we are still here in this problem because we don't speak up. The book is very clear on expressing the importance of why we need to speak up. And I really hope by sharing my story and how I've chosen to speak out, that it would inspire others to do the same. And the interesting thing about this book is I speak very candidly to the other side in that book. I say things that nobody would ever say to their face. It's things that I've thought of, and it's all respectful, but we've got to see things for what they are. And I know for me, for many years, I was in denial of the situation I was in, not even realizing the impact it was having on me. So it's very important that we speak out, because Nobody can read your mind. And the most important thing is when we don't speak out, there's a reason why we don't speak out. And the reason is because we feel powerless. And when you feel powerless, you're not going to take action. And when you don't take action, the situation will never change. And so this is why responsibility is on me. It's on you. It's on whoever is feeling the effects of it to speak out. And if we would even join forces, even stronger, in a peaceful way, of course.
Okay, let me jump to the comment. There are a lot of things that you've put in there that I have to unpack. We have a comment, and those who are just joining, if you want to contribute, please make sure you can use the hands up emoji, and we'll definitely call you or send us a comment. I'm going to be reading some of the comments that we have. If there are any questions, I'm going to post them to you. So the first comment is, how appropriate. I've been a victim of racism at my workplace this year, still without any, I think, any resolution. Racism is getting out of hand now, very open. You are making some really important points. I was advised not to get emotional during resolution meetings. So we are going to go back to some of these comments here. Let's sort of address them before we can go ahead about the powerlessness. Workplace victims. You describe yourself. I think you describe yourself in most of your publications as a victim. Why would you do that? Of all the things that Black women go through, you choose to always say, I'm a victim of systemic racism.
Because in my journey of unpacking my story, and that only came because I chose to write this book, I discovered my strength is in my weakness. We hide our weakness and we are ashamed of our weakness. And that's what kept me silent for so many years. But I discovered it's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite, because we cannot change what we do not acknowledge. And quite frankly, I think that's why racism is still here, because so many of us are afraid to see our weaknesses, right? And so in recognizing where I'm weak, it is then that I will put effort into getting stronger in that area. But if I'm denying my weakness, I'll never pursue to gain strength in it. So I can tell you, since I've owned my victimization, since I've owned my weaknesses, and I've given attention to it to improve myself, that's where I've built my confidence. That's where I found myself. Because if we deny a part of us that we're ashamed of, then how can we be our best? How can we be truly who we were created to be? It's not possible. We have to own all of us, the good and the bad, the strong and the weak.
Okay, let's just go back to victim, because I just had another comment that just came in. I recently experienced racism last week, still shaken, and the fear of losing a source of income is so strong. Sad, but yes, we need to speak up more. What do people do? Let's go back to the first comment was, I've been a victim of racism at my workplace this year, still without resolution. What do you do? You are a victim. I think, as you say, all of us are victims, but some of us, we really don't accept it. We really don't put it out there the way you put it. What do we do in the workplace if there is some event of racism and you really don't want to lose your income?
That's a fair question, and a very real fear. I mean, it's a reality. I've been out in that place for a very long time as well. But you know, I don't know the situation, but in the place of racism, in the workplace, I chose humility. So in other words, if my manager came and did something, you know, she said, oh, you did this or you did that. The one reaction I could have is I can sort of retaliate and say, I didn't do that. It wasn't me or what have you. That's one option, and if that's the case. Then there's another situation, you know what? Let me have a look. Maybe there is some truth in this situation. Let me have a look and see what can I do to do a better job next time. Because quite frankly, there is a sense we are at their mercy. So we can't play as if we're the boss. We're not the boss. So how do we coexist? But the secret, I think, that we miss is that while we're in the trenches, while you're being beaten down by them, don't stay there. Go and improve yourself. Go and build your confidence. Go and learn and get whatever it is you need to build yourself up. And that's why for me, my turning point took place when I joined Toastmasters. And I had an interest in public speaking, and I wanted to get over that fear that I had of speaking in public. And that began to change my world internally. Internally. Why we are oppressed? Why are we where we are? Because internally, we are crushed. We don't have the confidence within ourselves. And all of this, we are so much layers. All of this comes from childhood trauma, lived experiences. That keeps us lower down. But when you're oppressed, the trick is not to fight them. The trick is not to try to overpower them. The trick is humility. Do what you need to do to maintain peace if you're in that, if it's in an environment where you have to be in. But choose to improve yourself. Choose to build yourself up from the inside out. Sometimes, most of the time, we're oppressed and we stay there. And we just fall into victim mentality and don't do anything to build ourselves up. And that's the mistake.
You talk before about being powerless to make a change. And sometimes even when we are in a group or in a community or in a business, where you're not just the only Black person or the person of color, there are Indians there, Chinese there, and there's racism which is rampant and nobody speaks up and your other colleagues look the other way. Is that not some of the things that make us feel powerless? Does the book address such situations where it's not just Black people, but we have other communities as well, but they don't say anything about it or they look the other way?
It's absolutely true. When you're the only one, and it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to speak out. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy because I've done it, and it's scary. It is scary to the point where I've even been in meetings with senior managers where literally inside I'm shaking. So the fear is real. I'm not going to kid you guys. This is not about fake. It's real. And that's why I say we've got to own it. If you're fearful, call it out. Quite frankly, you know what? What's wrong with going to your manager and saying, you know what? You guys intimidate me. It's not nice to be in a situation where I feel intimidated. That's owning your weakness. That disarms everybody. That's what we don't realize. It's like when you do public speaking, when you get up there, you're so nervous, right? But once you say to the audience, you know, guys, I was really nervous getting up here. That changes something in you. And you kind of become more relaxed than if you never mention it. So there is a strategy that when you own your weakness, something takes place. Because number one, you're being true to you. And you're also being true to where you are in that moment. It empowers you far more than if you avoid it. Then if you pretend it's not happening, then you're not being true to you.
There are some situations where we like to document these things. Which is the best way to go about this? Say you have a boss who makes statements. Maybe he's ignorant about some of the racist statements he makes. Is it better to confront him, invite him for a meeting, or send like an email?
Well, documentation is everything. I mean, I'm in law, right? And in the office, and when it comes to your word against mine, paper trail is everything. What I didn't realize over the years, I have been keeping notes. And when I collected those notes, this is after I wrote the book, and I started to look at my notes and I realized that, oh my goodness, everything I have said, I have kept track of it. So everything in my book, I have documentation. I can prove it all. The only thing I don't do in the book is really name anyone, because I'm not about naming or shaming anybody, but just to have the truth come out. So documentation is everything, because your word against theirs. So every incident of racism, I wrote it down. Because number one, it gives you a way to get it out. if you at least, if you don't verbalize it, at least write it down and get it out. And keep a notebook, journal, at the minimum. Because you may be able to use it one day. That's what happened to me in the end. I have the evidence. So nobody, they can try suing me if they want, but I have my evidence to document that it really did happen.
Okay, let me jump back to the comments. I hope I didn't lose track. Okay, powerful. Don't stay in the trenches. Improve yourself. Be part of advocacy organization. Very well said. It is so important to demonstrate humility and build yourself up from the inside. This is a great conversation because it is important for white folks to examine themselves and the spaces they are in regarding their biased roles in perpetuating racism. It reminds me of the book.
Can I comment on what you just said there?
Let me just read the last comment and then you come in. It reminds me of the book Butterfly in the Trenches. So right about that line. Go ahead.
What you just said there about the white people in that comment, it's very important for me to say that everything I'm saying about what we need to do does not absolve the other side of their responsibility. With leadership, with money, with success, with power, it comes a responsibility. So it doesn't absolve them from what they have to do. And I made that very clear in the book. And in the book, I state what their responsibility is. But because they're not here to represent themselves, I'm not going to talk about that piece, right?
Let's move a bit from scenarios and talk about the book itself. How long did it take you to write this book?
Interestingly enough, the idea came to me to write this book in June of last year. While I was preparing for my law exam, someone invited me to a workshop on how to write a book. And two people said it to me. I said, okay, well, this is clearly a sign. This is for me. So I attended the workshop. It sparked my interest. And I said, okay, I'll do it in July when I'm finished my exams. July came, I started the book, and I finished the book in about 2 weeks because I wrote nonstop. And I've been editing it ever since to make sure that I had all the right documentation. I even had a lawyer review it to make sure that I wasn't incriminating myself or the employer, because it's not about getting anybody in trouble. Like, we don't point fingers, doesn't solve problems. And I really wanted to be a part of the solution. So I made sure as best I can to be as accurate and as honest, and get the information out that's important to get the message across.
And how did you start the writing? Did you have like a notepad, or you just went to your journal or your diary that you have written everything down and just said, oh, this is important, you go in, this is not important, you stay out? How was that process?
Well, the process actually, as I mentioned, I was an emotional knot. I really couldn't figure out, okay, this is a huge message, a huge topic. Where am I going to start from? So I got a publisher. And so in conversations with her, and she helped me to kind of structure the chapters. So I had to get help to get it out in a structural way, because I can tell you, like I said, emotionally, it was tough because I had to unpack all the years of trauma that I didn't understand. And I had to connect. I really go through the journey of where my childhood trauma started and how that impacted me and collided with the workplace and with racism. And so I really walked through that to show people how your trauma that we may have suppressed and our lived experience that we keep repeatedly going over keeps us stuck from moving forward. That's why self-improvement is key, because you don't realize, because we've been carrying this baggage of trauma and setbacks for so long, you don't realize how entrenched we are that we can't seem to dig our way out. But that's why improving yourself, putting in the work to build your confidence up is essential to starting your journey forward.
How did you go about choosing a publisher? I understand there are some publishers who will not put their hands on certain topics.
The idea, well, you know what? As a colleague said to me, this topic chose me. I didn't choose the topic. Like I thought that was interesting. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is a huge topic. It was intimidating at first. Thought, how can I write about this topic? But the publisher found me. That's what I said. The topic chose me and the publisher. Someone really recommended it. I think it was just, I believe it was just my time. Because, you know, we all run into our destiny when the right time comes. And I know for sure it was just my right time, and we all have a different right time. But we got to realize, if you're not working on improving yourself, how are you going to find your right time? Because when your right time comes, you might miss it because you're too afraid to move forward. And that's why, you know, there's multiple reasons why we need to improve ourselves. But that's another reason, because I had put in the work, I had done the public speaking, I had confronted that fear, I'd had the difficult conversations in the office, I'd spoke out in the office, right? I was doing my law degree. So I was just going after me to get me out of that hole. And so that's where my destiny met me along the way.
Are there some people who discourage you not to get into such a controversial topic?
Sorry?
Are there some people who told you, Denise, this thing you are writing is going to get everybody into trouble, stay away from it?
No, I told myself that. I had to overcome me. I'm the one who said, Denise, are you crazy? I lived it.
I think the other people may just be afraid to tell you in front of your face that they are crazy, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to ask if you are a rebel.
I agree. I don't think anyone was really bold enough to tell me don't do it, but I could tell you that in the office, some of those meetings I went into, someone asked, 2 people told me, don't do those meetings. And I did it anyways, because it was in me. I was too passionate about the topic. I would not be genuine and authentic to myself if I didn't do it, because it was in me very strong.
Okay, we are getting a lot of comments and things. Let me go there so we can get the audience involved. Again, if you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate. You can either post them on the chat forum, or you can raise your hand and I'll definitely bring you in. Okay, somebody just supported you. Documentation is everything. So true. Even if they insist on verbal communication, go back and send email to clarify what was said verbally. Do you address the common concept of equity in the workplace in regards to racism? It seems to be getting mixed up. I think we'll come back to that. We'll have to address that and see what the book says about that. Do you require permission, as in being, you know what, these are questions. Let's go one after another. Does the book, what does the book say about the concept of equity when it comes to the workplace and racism?
It doesn't talk about equity, and here's why. I'll tell you my take on equity, and I understand equity is when you give someone who is at a disadvantage a step up to put them on a level playing field, right? That's my understanding of what equity is. And one of the things that I don't cover in the book is these type of things, terminology. There's a lot of academic sort of, you know, important areas to discuss, but to me, those things are a distraction. Those things are a distraction from the root cause of where we're hurting, of a root cause of getting us out of this place into a different place. So while they're important, I find that those are externals. But you know, external things only go so far. External thing doesn't get me out of my victimization. What it does, it keeps me dependent on somebody else to get me out. And that's what equitable stuff does. As important as it is, I'm not saying it's not important, but if I rely on that, I'm still waiting for somebody to save me. And that mentality is what keeps us victimized. So my take on this is all that stuff is important, but don't sit waiting for it. While that's happening, improve yourself. Own your weakness and improve it.
Another question. Did you require permission, as in being absolved from conflict of interest, from your present employer to publish this book?
Very good question.
First thing, did your employer know you are going to publish a book like this?
You know, first of all, nobody knew because it's my story. Number one, I'm entitled to tell my story. Number two, I was scared as heck after I finished writing. What am I doing? Am I crazy? And I actually got an independent lawyer to read it because that was my number one fear. And so to get that, and he read it and he said to me, you know what? It was refreshing. A lawyer told me the book was refreshing because I just spoke the truth. And he said everything in there I needed to say to tell my story. I didn't name anybody. I don't call anybody up. So I got the clearance that way. And by around December, I got nervous again. I said, oh my goodness, they're going to fire me when this book comes out. So I did go and I declared a conflict of interest, a declaration for a conflict of interest. And I actually got the clearance. They approved me. So they know that I'm doing this. And this is not just a book. I also have a website, a business that I want to help individuals really walk through all the stuff I'm talking about. We offer support to individuals to help them move through what it takes to see themselves as a victim and then start to build themselves, provide them with the support, the tools, and the guidance to develop so that they can work through to get to the other side, to rely on themselves and find who they are. I also do it for corporations as well to help them.
We'll go. We are coming to the point of I think a rise over race or something like that. We'll go to the website and talk about some of the services you offer out of the book. There was another comment, talk about recollecting powerful emotion. Your experience were definitely extremely powerful. DEI in the workplace seems to be used to undermine racism. I don't know what DEI stands for.
Diversity and inclusion. That's the umbrella that covers this topic in the workplace, diversity and inclusion. It's a human resources, diversity and inclusion. It's just another department sort of thing.
Okay, let's go back and talk about your conflict of interest. How did you address it in the workplace? You went up and say, okay, I am talking about racism and I think it's a conflict of interest. Or how did that conversation go?
No, it wasn't a conversation. It was really, you have to submit whatever, because the company I work with, whatever you're doing, that could be a potential conflict. You just have to disclose it. And so I just gave them a brief summary of what the topic is and what I was, trying to do with it. And I also gave them the letter from the lawyer that confirmed that there was nothing incriminating in there for anybody. So, it's about being transparent because number one, it's my story. And that's the other thing. Nobody can deny you of you. This is where, I have to say this is where we so often get sidetracked. The reason why we must own where we are, whether it's bad or good, is that's where our power lies. Nobody can deny you for saying, this is where I am. Yes, I'm hurting. Yes, I'm sad. Yes, I'm angry. But when we try to pretend we're something else, we derail ourselves. You can't really emphasize that enough. So that's how I went to them. I said, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I believe I have something important to say on this topic based on my experience. And you might even learn something from it yourself. So that was my approach.
Has this book changed the way your workplace is being managed?
It hasn't come out yet.
Well, they just knowing about it, I think some people are already adjusting their method of operation.
You know what? My workplace, they're doing a lot. They are doing a lot to address it. They're not aware of the content of the book, but I can say they are making a lot of strides and they are doing a lot of things to improve the environment. So I respect them for that. However, we're still here. And that's my take on it. We're still here, no matter what, until, and the whole idea is we need to keep changing and improving our environment until lives are changed. That's how you know it's working. If lives aren't changed, we're still here. Okay,
let's move a bit ahead. One of the biggest challenges we parents have is how our kids grow up in this community that we find ourselves and tackle racism, especially in the school system. Does the book address this fear, or what does it talk about kids and racism?
The book doesn't talk about kids and racism, but it talks about my experience in the earliest areas when I experienced racism. I experienced racism for the first time when I came to Canada. I came to Canada at 7 years old, and when I was 8, somebody called me the N-word on the playground, one of the students. In high school, I told my guidance counselor I wanted to be a lawyer. She taught me into being a legal assistant. And naive me went down that path. So this is why I ended up having a law degree. And I also talk about in the book, the barriers and the struggles that I went through to get to the point now where I have, just close to getting my law degree. So it talks about the struggle of education and the workplace, and those struggles are real. And again, it's not to deny them. They do happen, they are there, but what do we do with it, and how do we turn those painful experiences into fuel to propel us to be and do what we need to do? And that's what I did. I turn all the pain, the upset, the anger, the frustration, I use it as fuel to get to where I want to be.
Now that you know what you know, now that you're an expert in this field, what would you have told your 8-year self when you were advised to become a legal assistant instead of a lawyer?
I would have asked more questions because I didn't know what I didn't know. I would have more faith in myself and find a way to stay in that class and get everything I need to get out of it. Because what I end up doing in the end, after hitting all those negativity and barriers, I avoided. I gave up on myself. That was my number one thing. I gave up on myself a long time ago without realizing it. And that's what it means to be a victim. It means that you've given up on yourself and you then start looking to somebody else or something else to save you. And that is where we often go wrong. That's why self-improvement is so important.
Okay, let's go to professions. I know the book focuses on a lot of the workplace. So let's go to professions who have strict hierarchy. We're talking about the medical profession, the military, professions like that. Even law, they have strict hierarchy. Everybody knows their position. How do you handle racism in such professions? The doctor comes and tells the nurse that, or the patient says, I don't want this nurse to treat me. A student tells the teacher that, I don't want you to be my teacher because you are Black. What do you do?
Well,
what does the book say about situations like that?
See, now, when it comes to I'm in law, and the hierarchy in law firms is very real. And as a legal assistant, that puts me pretty much at the bottom of the ranking. So I know what it is to be at the bottom. I know what it is for lawyers to make me feel like I belong at the bottom and not give me opportunity. I asked for opportunity to go to court to observe the hearing, and I received no response to my request. So when people do that to you, it's a very subtle way of saying, you're not important, you don't deserve this, or at least that's how we interpret it, right? So when those hierarchies are in place, and they're in a lot of places, or anybody who has power over you pretty much can exhibit that type of behavior, and the result is the same. When you're at their mercy, you're at their mercy, right? I mean, yes, you can get up and change jobs and do all those things, but the reality is we know that we need the income. So how do you survive through it? Is again, self-improvement. Self-improvement, I can't stress it enough, because how else, here you are, you need the job, you need the income, and you are sad, you are frustrated, you're down and out. What are you gonna do? You gotta look inward. You gotta find the power within you to help yourself. No savior is coming. And for a long time, I really thought, I waited. I really thought somebody was gonna give me a hand up, give me an opportunity for a job. But no, We got to create our own opportunity after we build ourselves up so we get strong enough to create those opportunities. It takes time, it takes work, I will not lie to you, but it's worth the effort.
Are we sometimes also not the problem? Because sometimes we don't even know our worth. We come to a country like this, you come from a very poor third world country, as they describe us, where people make what, $300-500 a month, and you come here and somebody is giving you $2,000 and you think you are the end of the world. Are we not sometimes a problem ourselves?
That's exactly, yes, we are our own problem, absolutely, yes.
How do we get out of it?
And this is why self-improvement, sorry?
How do we get out of us being our problem?
Self-improvement. Owning your problem, owning your weakness, and go and find a way to strengthen it. You can't blame somebody else.
Let me put it this way. There is somebody working in a corporation somewhere. The person has been working there for 5 years, no salary raise, and the person feels that going to ask for a salary raise is not going to be acceptable. It's not something that she should do. What would be your advice to that person?
If the person, sorry,
let me put it another way. So I am working in a corporation. I have like 3 white people above me. I am aware that all these people are making more money than me. These people keep looking at me down and making me believe I'm not worth what I'm doing. But I want to ask for a salary raise. How do I go about it?
Do your homework. It's always good if you think that what you offer is worth it. Do your homework. Find out what other people in your position, how much they're making, and then have your case. You have to have, create why you think you deserve a raise. Prove your case, and by all means, go for it. The worst they can tell you is no. So definitely go for it, but don't go in there unprepared. Like, have your backing to say why you feel you deserve it, and evidence, and what the salary increase of others have, and definitely.
Sometimes in the whole workplace system, you know that there's this systemic racism structure in it. And trying to ask for any favors is like going against the status quo. What does the book say about systems that we know, policing, for example, that we know that they will treat a Black person differently from the others? How do we handle those situations?
When it comes to policing, the book covers the overt nature of racism. It covers the subtlety. And I chose that specifically because we talk so much about the obvious and the direct racism, like the police. That is so obvious. The book doesn't cover that, other than to say that's one form of it. It more talks about the subtlety of it. But I'll come back to that in 1 second. When it comes to the workplace and you feel oppressed, you feel like, these people are making choices and you don't have a voice, let me tell you what I did. When I got overlooked for that promotion 6 times and I went to law school and I had done my Toastmasters at this point, I decided that I'm going to do things differently. I changed my perspective. I decided I'm going to start hanging around with different individuals in the office. I went to lunch with different individuals. I, sparked conversation in the office differently than I did in the past. I became intentional about my interactions. I stopped taking things personal. I even joined committees. I started to volunteer. At one point, I think I was involved in about 4 or 5 committees. Plus I was going to law school and everything else. But I wanted to be a part of the solution. I wanted to get on the inside to understand. I wanted to be part of the decision making. So here's part of the problem with what we do. We often sit on the outside and criticize. We often sit on the outside and we don't know what's going on behind those closed doors. Get involved in your workplace. Become part of the solution. And I found that in getting involved and doing those things, I ended up leading meetings where I was the only one talking about topics that nobody else wanted to talk about, because it had to do with these issues of hiring. Nobody wanted to say those things. Well, guess what? I took them on my own, and I gave a presentation on my own. See, we have to be ready to be able to take these opportunities, but we can't do this unless we build our confidence. I couldn't have done this years ago. By that point, I had already accomplished some things that had built my confidence up. So I was actually participating. Now I'm on committees still and making a difference. So you have to get involved and get to the other side of it, rather than keeping yourself solely in a victim position. Become part of the solution in some way, find someone.
Let's shift a bit. Your book is coming up. When is the launch? When is the launch planned?
It should be before the end of April. So between the 15th to the 30th, I've got to choose a date somewhere around there.
During your launch, are you going to be having conversation about the situation currently going on in Ukraine?
I didn't initially plan to do that. It's certainly something I can do, but I haven't sat down to lay that out entirely yet. But you know, the interesting thing about the Ukraine, as I watched those students tell their story, and having written this book, and having gone through what I've gone through, and I'm on the other side, and I'm looking out and observing, and I have a different lens than I did previously. And one thing I saw in the eyes of those students, and that is, there was a sense of betrayal that they felt when they went to the border and they, you know, were turned away. All that experience is real, it's horrible. I can't imagine what it's like, and I'm not trying to pass judgment in any way, but just an observation with a different set of lens that I currently have. I saw a sense of that they felt betrayed because they were expecting to be treated like everyone else, like we often all do, and then they were shocked when they weren't. Now, again, no criticism towards them, but just from a learning perspective to move forward. My takeaway from that is to say, that's where I think we as a people make some mistakes. Because how many times do we need to be discriminated against before we realize there's no validation coming? And we continue to go hoping that this time is different. And I say that because oftentimes signs of racism are there, but we don't see it, we don't articulate it, or we don't recognize it for what it is. So, and I'm saying too, the other thing is every time we talk about these racial experiences, we validate them and almost like seals them in our soul. So I think it's very important that we stop telling our stories as victims and stop responding to the victimization. If they want to talk to somebody, go talk to the people who are oppressed. Don't come to me because I have nothing. I mean, I'm the one feeling it. I'm trying to get out of it. I'm not validating it anymore. I'm not giving them that kind of attention. That's my position now that I'm on the other side. I wasn't always in this place.
So I'll just say a bit on this Ukraine issue. The government of Canada says Ukrainian citizens can come and stay here. I think 3 years is what they say. But we have Black students who don't have a place to go. How do somebody who is listening now make a change? Is that not something that we can only stand from the outside and say there's nothing we can do? Or is there really something that we can do?
But when you talk about power, and we talk about the government bringing people from there because their lives is at stake, that's on a level we don't have any control. If we want to get involved in those things, we've got to get in those positions, right? We got to put the work in and get in those positions. So a lot of this racial issues is a position of power. And most of us are in a position where we don't have power. And the only way you're going to change racism is you've got to change your level of influence. You've got to be in a position to be ready to make those key decisions when the time comes. So I'm not in that position. I don't have any power. So yes, we can use the processes to, to advocate for these things, but the key is that we've got to get more of us in those positions.
All right, let me jump to the comments. So good to know that the employer approved the book. Has the employer offered to read the book?
No, they haven't reached out to read it yet, no.
Okay. Unfortunately, most Black parents are not aware that this is still happening today to our children in the school system. Supporting each other, not allowing anyone to make you feel less, mentoring and sponsoring each other, not discounting our experience and skill, our experience, skills, and education. Well said. Be a part of the solution in critical volunteering inside and outside of the workplace to build the leadership skill and resilience. Will it be an in-person launch? So let's just talk about the launch. How is it going to be? In-person, virtual? How do we?
It's going to be virtual. It's going to be a virtual launch just because that's the nature of our world right now. It just so happens that we're opening up, but I don't think we're like, everything is just so gradually. So it's going to be virtual. And at some point I will have a book signing opportunity. But for now, the launch is going to be virtual.
What if somebody wants to do their pre-purchase right now, but they want the signed copy?
Oh, well, if you pre-order it from my website, those pre-orders will get an autographed copy. I will sign that copy for sure. So order it from my website ahead of time. It's there available now, and you will get a signed copy.
So what is the website? Also, just for those who are, I've just put the information group. So if you want, you click that link, you join, and we'll definitely send information when the launching is taking place. And what's the website? It's
riseoverrace.com.
Okay.
So if you go to riseoverrace.com, you can pre-order the book, and I have a free gift that you can download there that has to do, it's the 21 lessons that are in the book. I offer it there as a free gift, and some other information.
Yeah, you can also scan the flyer that we send out for this podcast.
Actually, the scan is not, it's not the right book on the scan.
Oh, really? Okay. So please don't scan it. So let's talk about Rise Over Race. It's one of your projects that you do. I understand that. What is it all about?
So part of the book, the reason why I also chose this book, I think, is because I have a unique perspective on the topic, because I know what it's like to be privileged because of my own life experience, and that's in the book as well. And I know what it is to be a victim. And so because I'm able to kind of not choose sides, I can really speak, objectively from both sides. I offer services to individuals as well as organizations that really want to make a change when it comes to this discrimination in the workplace. So we help leaders become more clear on how to engage minorities, and we help to inspire minorities where morale is low, to build them up, to make them, want to sort of renew their passion for life and work, because we spend so much time in the workplace that it's a shame that so many of us are unhappy. And then in the end, the idea is that we want to create a workplace where all minorities feel welcomed and all those who have any kind of encounters with discrimination. So workplaces should be inviting. So we have specific tools and strategies where we help organizations go after behavioral changes, not policies, not programs, but behavior. That goes after, indirectly some of the areas that we haven't wanted to touch, like the hierarchy. but
So
everyone has work to do.
Yeah, I'm on the website. Just trying to find out. So can you direct us where we can get the book if we go to riseoverrace.com?
Okay.
And if anybody has found it out, please, you can put the link on the chat as well so that others can definitely purchase the book.
Is it?
I know I went there. I went there sometime, but
it's not there. Let me have.
I am not sure. I think I purchased my copy through this, but I am not sure. Anyway, we are going to definitely put it on the link.
Okay, scroll down a little bit. Did you go under services?
Yeah, I think I'm under services.
And what about contacts?
Okay, could be here. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So please, people, this is where you buy the book. And you are selling it for $20, so less than $20. So your aim is not to get rich.
Pretty much. You know, it's a very simple read. It's easy to follow from what, you know, those who have pre-read it told me. It's very easy to follow, you know, the emotional side of it as well, because that's where a lot of the racial issues are for us. A lot of the racial aspect of it is wrapped up in our emotions. So I really go through unpacking that emotional side for us.
Okay, so people, or everybody listening, share the link. I am going to put this on the chat as well. So let's try and get as many people as possible to buy this book and promote it. That's the only way we can help our sister here. We have about 15 minutes to go, but on Rise Over Race, you are trying to change the whole, to stop racism, basically. Is that the aim?
Yes. The aim is to renew hope that there is change coming. There is change possible. And one thing I've heard since this whole George Floyd situation, I keep hearing, oh, change is going to take a long time. Change is going to take a long time. Yes, I know change takes time. But when I hear that comment, it makes me think another 20, 40, 50 years. But that's not true. Because from the moment I decide I'm no longer going to be a victim, from the moment I decide to start improving myself, my change has already started. So change is a lot closer than we think. We can also create good habits instead of bad habits. And that's why we look at this, you know, Rise Above Racism. We look at it from a behavioral point of view. How do we change ourselves? Because that's the only place we have power. We can't change anybody else. And if each person changes themselves, that's what makes the world a better place.
All right, let me jump back to the chat. So several organizations are coming up in Canada focusing on Black empowerment and equity. Urge everyone to join one of them. I think the website is there, CanadianBlackDirectorates.ca. So please check that as well. Are the same offers available if you order through Amazon instead of Rise Over Race website?
No. If you order from Amazon, it is on Amazon, but if you order from Amazon, you won't get the same, because the order from my website come directly to me. So I'm able to do that. If you get it from Amazon, it will come from them, and so there won't be a signed copy. The other thing I should mention about the launch is I am offering coaching services. So there will be opportunity to win free coaching session. That would be an hour with me. And that's part of the service that I do too, is coaching to help individuals navigate through some of these difficult points that we find ourselves in. And in the book, I talk about my mentor and how my mentor was so key in helping me to navigate when I was in the trenches. We have to surround ourselves with the right advice so we can navigate those tough times. Otherwise, we can create greater problems for ourselves.
So let's talk about your public speaking and talking and improving people. How do we get you to come talk to some of our organizations, some of the places we work? or some of the small meetings that we have?
Oh, I would love to do that. If you go to my website and fill out the information there, where it asks you to put in your email address and what your needs are and what you're looking for, that's how you can reach me. But you can also reach me by emailing me at Denise Grant at riseoverrace.com.
And how long does it take you to respond, or it depends on the situation? How do you get to the point where somebody sends you an email and you're standing in front of the person talking?
Well, I would definitely aim to respond within 48 hours, definitely, but I often get to it sooner.
Okay. Do you have other partners that do the same thing like you, that you can do referral, or that you can say, oh, this is a more complex situation, can you join me? Are you trying to build a team around you? Because your topic and the things that you address is unique. So
it is unique. And this is where I do have a team that I am building to have other resources. So for example, when we go into work with organizations, you can imagine what challenge it would be to convince an employer why they should treat their minorities better. Well, there are tools that I have that allows us to play games within the organization to create empathy. So I do have, that's one area. I also have others to share their stories of how they overcame. And, you know, as we get more into developing the services, and as I get to know your needs better, I will be able to draw in other resources. But yes, it will not just be me alone. One man, as my mother-in-law says, doesn't fight a war.
I know there are a lot of people in the community who, that's why I was asking about partnership and how you can get some people. I know there is a Bridget and there is a Adejisola who have programs. I don't know if they are there. If they are there, please, if you want to contribute, you can turn on your camera. And because we're about 10 minutes to round up. So I'd like to know like just what you people are doing so that the community can as well support you, and maybe you can do some partnerships. So Bridget and Adejisola, if any of you have this. Okay, I have Adejisola and there, please. Hi.
Hi, good evening.
So Adejisola is the president of the Council of Nigerian Professionals. She is a banker by profession, mother by blessing, and she does a lot of community services. So what do you have on the table? And first of all, what do you think of Denise Grant and her book?
It's actually an honor to meet you virtually. And thank you for this time, because a lot of us are not speaking up. And it may not necessarily because we don't want to. It may be because we cannot speak up. We all experience a lot of things. I mean, there's nobody that is exotic as we are, that is working in any organization that would say that they've not experienced one form of racism or the other. So it's good for us to speak our truth. So thank you for speaking your truth. And thank you for encouraging others to speak their truth. Because when strong women speak, others gain from it. I'm really, really happy that I did put some comments on the chat. You know, there were questions around what can we do, how can we do it? On CMP, we do a lot of mentoring. And we hear a lot of people, when we're coming to this part of the world, I'm from Nigeria, we look at this part of the world as God's own country. And we feel that manna is going to drop from heaven. We just need to get to Canada or get to US. But when we get here, we realize that there's another beast that we have to worry about, which is systemic anti-Black racism. It's not something we're used to, but we get to understand, you know, our vocabulary changes with the kind of struggles we have to go through. And I realized very quickly that when people come in within 1 month or 2 months, they've already lost themselves. And so we mentor to make sure that people can still feel strong in themselves. People that have walked the walk, I mean, I've had my share, and I'm still having it, even though I'm at a senior level, I'm still having it. So it doesn't stop. You're right about, educating yourself. The only problem with that is that you get overqualified. And then, because I have, oh my goodness, series of degrees, executive MBA and all, series of degrees. And then you become a threat. But the point is, it's important for us to support ourselves. It's important for us to mentor ourselves. So thank you for this book. I'm gonna get my copy right away. And even, you know what, this year I'm buying books for people as Christmas gifts, period. That's what I'm gonna do. And I'm actually happy to say that I actually just published a book too. And I'm actually thank you. Thank you. I think we're going to invite authors. We're publishing more. And I think apart from the 9 to 5, seriously, I think we need to go into business. I just bought this book, another book that was published by a Nigerian, Live It Up. So for sure, when I say I'm buying, I am buying books. People are going to get books from me this year. And I encourage everyone to support us, because when you win, I win. When I win, you win. When we have more people in our community become entrepreneurs, that's when we can tell our stories. So with CMP, we aim to equip people of African heritage. We do a lot. I'll post I'm on that Christmas list. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. See, they're loving the books already. So I'll put our website on the chat. But there's a lot that we do. We have language schools, and French is one of the languages that we teach. We have mentoring that is actually starting tomorrow for 3 months. We have series of events to empower, to again, we know that people that tell stories are the powerful and rich people. So we want to see how we can create wealth. My background is banking. So how can we educate ourselves that way? And we talk about even how to work together as a community, because we can only be stronger when we work together. Doing things in silos is not going to help us. And the minute we start working together, I feel we're really going to change the narrative. With Ifwenge, we were talking about the Ukraine issue, and my heart bleeds just to see what those kids are going through. But then, lesson learned, what can we do? Yes, I may not be the Minister of Immigration, but I can send an email to the Minister of Immigration. And so can we all send an email, do something, no matter how little, to help those children, that Canada open its hearts and its borders also to African descent, considering that, yes, the war is horrible, but racism during war is unbelievable. I'm going to stop there because I love to talk. I'll just keep talking and taking away everything, but it's a pleasure. Thank you for the book.
All right. Let me bring in Bijit. I know you have some projects you're working on. Please unmute yourself. I know you're just been so busy, but you decided to take part. We do really appreciate that. Please introduce yourself and tell us some of the projects you are working on related to racism.
Well, thank you so much for this platform. And I apologize, I missed a bit of it. And I am like, is this recorded? Because I want every part of it. I just got back from a 12-hour shift and I'm so exhausted. I apologize for not showing my video, but I'm in pajamas and ready to sleep. Amazing. Where have you been? I want to meet, Denise Grant. Wow, powerful. Thank you. I was just skimming through your site for the book. I'm getting a copy as well. Is it Miss Adeji Sola? Oh my gosh, where have you, why don't I, like, I'm just meeting you for the first time. Anyways, my name is Birgit. I'm from Nigeria. I work as a registered nurse and also a clinical course director at Centennial College. I lost my voice. This is not my real voice. I've been I've been quite vocal when it comes to, like, specifically immigration issues, nursing, and my platform is Twitter. And very recently, just to summarize, I remember just before CNN or Jazeera, they all carried the news about Black Black students being discriminated against at Polish borders. A friend of mine had her brother at the border who actually told us the story, and I used my platform to amplify it, and I got attacked. I got attacked by a conservative MPP, Natalia, and she, like, it's all there right now. We're actually going a little bit legal. She attacked me that I was spreading misinformation. I had to take down my tweet. And then that same night, I got attacked by the Polish embassy. And then the chief executive officer of my nursing organization also threatened me that I was spreading misinformation. I was inventing stories. All of this unfolded on Twitter. 3 days later, I went on CNN, BBC, the entire world heard the news, and they were, kind of ashamed and everything. And long story short, it just goes to point out how our stories are never believed until they're told by white people. So it was very, very heartbreaking. I've been so stressed beyond belief. And just today, I was able to send a letter signed by 55 nurses to the board of directors of the organization to address anti-Black racism in your organization, especially because they just released a statement on anti-Black racism and all the performative actions you're about to embark on, while their chief executive officer is, displaying anti-racist stance on such a huge platform as Twitter. So that's just one of the many things that have happened, and racism in healthcare and nursing, it's all over the place. And when we tell our stories, we are often silenced. And unfortunately, this is a lot of people cannot speak up, just like you said, for several reasons, right? So I'm glad we have this opportunity to connect, to network, and to stand together, because no one can do this on their own. We all need each other to be able to dismantle racism. And I'm happy to work with, and to bring this up more and more. So it really breaks my heart. It's very personal to me. There are lots of stories, but this is not the time for it. Thank you for the platform. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brigitte. It's been a pleasure having you here. We are now at the end of the platform. At the end of this podcast. It's been a blessing having everybody contributing. Our next talk is going to be about taxation. We know this is tax time. I don't know if it's systemic racism or I'm lucky. I've not been able to get somebody from CRA to come and tell me how to file my taxes on this podcast, but I am getting accountants who know what they're doing, and they are going to be giving, we're going to have another discussion about this. Karine, I don't know if Karine is there. She can turn on her camera. She'll be the one doing all the moderation. So I'll be having a break. So Karine, if you want to sell your event for 2 weeks, you can put it on the chat as well. So please thank everybody for coming. Obviously, our guests on the panel will have the last word, and then we'll close. Denise.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to share my ideas and my thoughts and my experiences around this important topic. And I agree with Bridget. It is so key that we support one another. It's really key that we speak out with one another and with peace, with humility, and that we really strive to be the best that we can be, even on the job. Do the best job that you can do for them, because they still enrich our lives because they give us a place of employment. And we feel it's important that we count our blessings. So while we are suffering, there is good in every situation. And let's continue to focus on the good while we work on doing what we've got to do to get on the other side.
Before you go, there is a question. If the book is sent to her home, where she can sign it, how will the purchaser receive it afterward? So I can answer that. Oh, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
So when you place the order through her website, she gets the information herself, and she is going to sign it, and then before they ship it to you. So it doesn't go to her home before it gets back. That's why we encourage everybody to buy through her website, riseoverrace.com.
Yes.
riseoverrace.com. So check out the website. Make sure you purchase the book. You can purchase another copy maybe next week or in 2 weeks from now. Somebody is going to give everybody who is going to do an Oprah. You get a book, you get a book, you get a book. Denise, thank you so much, not just for coming to this platform, but for doing what you are doing. I hope those who are listening will reach out to me or figure out a way to reach out to you so that you can not just help them, you can help the community, help the organizations that they work with. And as everybody has said, we need to come together to accomplish or to work or to achieve this goal of rising over racism. I'm going to call everybody to unmute themselves. You can turn on your camera and tell a big thank you to Denise before we close. I'll give 1 minute for that, so we close at 9:35. Again, thank you for listening, and thank you for spending this 1.5 hours with us. So please turn on your cameras and tell Denise thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Denise.
Denise, thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Great
thank
work,
you.
great presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. Yeah, go ahead. Denise, kudos to you. You're doing an excellent job. Very pleased with the work that you've done. And I just pray that you'll continue on this path and you'll be successful in wherever your next direction or your next endeavor will be. Certainly an excellent job.
Thank you so much for that.
I'm ordering my hard copy and I'm looking forward for an audio version again. So congratulations on excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And is
thank you.
there a link to the TED Talk you gave?
Actually, should be available on my website, or if you contact me, I can send you a link when I get my talk only. If you email me and get me, and I'll get it to you.
Thank you, I will do that.
Or you can reach out to me. I'll definitely figure out a way to send it to you. Yeah.
Sure.
I think
when I
everybody.
order my book, I will do that.
Sure.
Yeah,
I hope
thank you.
everybody a good night and enjoy your weekend. I hope there will be no snow tomorrow. It's supposed to be spring. Good night, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Good night.
Right. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Night.